So our first speaker will be Roland. You heard from him a little bit earlier. So I will be introducing him and he will be giving his talk first. So you can probably see he is full of energy with his loud booming voice that has all this energy that's very contagious as well. So usually just his good day to me fills me with energy and puts a smile on my face. And he is always really excited about his research and field. At first, I thought it was like maybe a first year thing. You come in, you're super excited. But he's been with us for a while now, but he's still super excited. So it's really encouraging to see that energy and excitement, especially through the years of grad school. So I'll turn it over to Roland and we'll get to hear more about his research and how he ties in his faith.
Good day, and a good day it is for Christian theology. I shall begin by sharing my screen. Let's see here. Every single time that I'm in charge, or rather that I'm a participant of Zoom, a passive participant, I feel like a Zoomer. But whenever I'm in charge, as I kind of am now, I feel like a boomer, technologically speaking. So, good day. I'm Roland. I'm a third year. Yeah, son of a gun. I think I'm a third year. How did that happen? At UC Berkeley, I'm a triple Stanford reject, and that's a tertiary motivator for me to do well and continue in academia so that they can accept me ever. No, I want to give an invited speech at their Department of Geophysics and sass them a little bit, just for fun. Tertiary, don't worry about me that much. Not that much, but I'll still accept any praise you can get. As a good earth scientist, I want to study, or I want to begin with a unit conversion, converting 1 square inch into square centimeters. And with that horrendous humor out of the way, let us begin my talk that's all about fast glaciers but slow faith, which is sort of where I think I am. I originally came to Jesus, well, I don't even know when exactly. It's been a slow process. It sort of started really getting going in my junior year of high school. But there have been times when it's really been surging forward and times where I've sort of slowed down, where for whatever reason, and I'm still trying to figure this out, and that's something I always try to keep checking in on. My faith, or the exercise of my faith, has slowed down. And so these days I'm studying how glaciers can dig out the ground. It's a colder form of geomorphology. So today I'm going to talk about what exactly makes glaciers as slow as they are, or as fast as they are, and why doesn't my faith move forward faster even if I feel quite saved? Somehow, in my scatterbrained mind, I'm going to try to tie these two together. So, how exactly do glaciers move at all? Well, firstly, they build up in the accumulation zone where it's cold enough where it ends up snowing more than it melts. And this tends to be true at higher elevations and at higher latitudes where the sunlight is not being as concentrated on the ground. And so here we have a graph of balance, mass balance. Start out at, let's say, 0, and we accumulate, and then it becomes summer, and then it melts a little bit, but by the end of the year, look, we started up higher than the 0 line where we started. So here we have the accumulation zone, and down here we have the ablation zone, where as you accumulate, and then it turns to the melt season, and you end up with less mass than when you originally started. And so that gives some kind of hint as to how glaciers exist in the first place. You basically, in order to make a glacier, you want it to snow more than it melts over the course of a year. And eventually that snow will build up and build up and build up, and it'll start compacting into firn, F-I-R-N, and then into ice. And then it turns out that if you get enough ice, snow and ice built up, it starts deforming under its own weight, and it might also start sliding like a combination of slippery sandpaper and like flowing honey. But ice is so resistant to flow that we typically think of it as a solid. Yeah, let's see here. Have I said all the things? Oh yeah, I included some simple analogies here. You know, your bank account. I think we are elevated enough, to understand the concepts of accumulation and ablation, or mass loss. And so, in steady state, you will have accumulation up here and ablation down here, and in order to make up the difference, to even things out, the glacier tries to flow downhill because gravity. And this is a cross section of what it might look like. So these arrows are velocity arrows, and sort of up high in the accumulation zone where the ice, the snow is repeatedly getting buried, these vectors, these flow directions are slightly away from the surface and down. And over here in the ablation zone where you're starting to especially melt surface ice away, the vectors are closer to the surface. And it should also come as little surprise that near this boundary, near the contact between this mountain, this bedrock mountain, this solid rock mountain, and the ice, closest to where there will be friction along this contact, the arrows are relatively small compared to where they are at the surface. And it shouldn't be particularly surprising, if you think about it for a little, that the arrows tend to be largest at the equilibrium line in this extremely simplified glacier. Ice tends to be flowing fastest at the equilibrium line because that's where the ice is thickest and has the most oomph to be driven downhill. So let's see, snow gets buried and compacted into ice. When the ice is thick enough, it will deform under its own weight like syrup. Subglacial conditions, as I alluded to earlier, are extremely important for determining how quickly is this huge mass going to flow downhill. If you, for example, if you place an ice cube in a room temperature room on the counter, on a smooth counter, you can push it sideways with very little resistance at all. It's very slippery, in fact. It's like picking up the soap in the shower. And that's because there's as the ice melts, there's a thin layer of water that lubricates the contact between the ice and the countertop that it's sliding over. And so why don't glaciers behave this way? Well, you really need to understand the nature of the contact between the ice and the bedrock. And so is the ice frozen to the ground? Is the base of the slippery, is the base slippery from liquid water? Or is the base nearly frictionless from wet mud? It turns out the fastest glaciers are underlain by wet mud, as we'll see an example of later. It's like slipping on a banana peel. And so how exactly does the water, if glaciers are so darn cold, how exactly does the water get to the base? Well, this is a diagram from my advisor's textbook. Yes, I am flexing on you. My advisor wrote a textbook. And you can have surface meltwater that makes its way down through crevasses, through these pipes called conduits or moulins. And the water can make its way to the base of the ice. It can sort of pool up, or it can drain quite well, and you can get these enormous torrents of water draining out the base of the ice. This rabbit, for example, this is the white rabbit, and apparently it's 10 meters tall for scale. My advisor is a bit of a quirkster, and I try to take after him very well. So a question is, how much contact area is there between the water and the ice? If the water is very distributed over the bed, then it can lubricate very well. And if it's really channelized, then it might not be lubricating so well. And changing water pressure itself can redistribute the weight of the ice, locally causing uneven ice pressure, which can lead to erosion. So it's a whole spaghetti of different factors that all influence each other. And for some reason, I decided to, in my infinite wisdom, do my PhD on this. Right. And so here's a sort of a top-down view of what these cavities might look like. Early on in the melt season, they might not be particularly well connected, and so the subglacial drainage system might get really backed up, and these cavities can get really angrily pressurized, just like this doge over here, from all the water that's trying to press down into it. And so the higher the water pressure, here's a cross-section view now. Here's bedrock, and here's the ice above it. The higher the water pressure, the larger these cavities can grow. But the larger these cavities can grow, the less the contact area between the ice and the rock itself. So the base of the ice becomes slippier, and that might cause the ice to flow more easily, and that greater flow of ice can help connect some of these cavities. And then the water can start to channelize and organize. That can decrease the water pressure, and that can cause greater friction. But I mean, really, this can probably happen in any sequence of events that you can imagine. And it's kind of hard to study these places because it's hard to be an observer if you have to dig down kilometers through hundreds of meters of ice. So what I study is when the ice has been lifted off the bedrock by these cavities, and then these cavities drain. It's like your coworker, if any of you have ever worked retail, it's like when your coworker goes on break and there's a big mess, and they're leaving you to shoulder the burden of all this ice that for whatever reason is pressing down on you in the Walmart. I don't know why it's there, but that's a bigger problem that maybe your manager should sort out. And here's roughly what it looks like. This is what it looks like after the ice is gone. This is on the downstream end of one of these bedrock features called a roche moutonnées. Here you see what the low pressure water cavity zone would look like. And it turns out that when this depressurizes, the weight of the ice is concentrated on the edge of this ledge. And so if there are pre-existing cracks there, then this extra weight, it's like switching from wearing a snowshoe to wearing a stiletto high heel. You have the same ice weight, but smaller contact area, and so there's greater concentration of weight, and that can cause pre-existing cracks to grow and eventually break off these solid chunks. Here are some questions that I've been pondering and will continue to lose sleep and hair over as the years go on, God willing. This is called glacial quarrying because it's like what we do at a rock quarry. What do we do at a rock quarry? We break rocks and we take them away somewhere else. So here are some examples of ice that is underlain by wet deforming mud. What we see here is the frictional resistance, a map of the frictional resistance of the base of the rock, base of the ice. And we see here in the blue areas, there's very low friction, and in the red areas, there's relatively high friction. This is a top-down view again. And look at what the scale bar is here, tens of kilometers wide, some of these ice streams. They're really fast-flowing glaciers. They can be flowing on the order of thousands of meters per year, even over 10,000 meters per year, which is really fast for ice. And this is where I'm connecting it to my faith, because my faith journey has also experienced, imagine my faith journey started here, and there's some bumps, and there's some faster bits, and I'm trying to navigate my way through these along these blue areas as much as possible, trying to stay away from the red frictional areas. And now that my faith is somewhat more mature, who the heck knows, but I feel like it's more mature. I feel like I can get so encouraged in these blue zones that I can start to get complacent about how I'm doing, I feel like, yeah, God and me, we're like this. We're super tight. We understand each other super well. And then I relax, and perhaps don't put as much effort into theology and my relationship with him as I should. Now, of course, we are finite beings dealing with trying to have a good relationship and a fulfilling relationship and an understanding relationship and an encouraging relationship with an infinite being. And so in that sense, one can only make the case for, trying in different ways to engage. But, well, I don't succeed all the time. That's one of the reasons why I'm in this, try to participate in this fellowship. Fellowship is one of my great accelerants. Let's see here. Yeah. And so I ask you, what are some of the sticky points, some of the practices, thought processes, mechanisms that hold back our faith intermittently or more long-term? What are our catalysts, practices, and mechanisms that propel or make easier, make smoother and slipperier, in the friction sense, not in any other sense, our faith intermittently or more long-term, and perhaps also how have these changed with the new paradigm? I tend to be quite an extrovert, or at least sometimes, and so I feel like being in fellowship is really helpful. And I thank Van Hoff for being a blessed needle in my side, for continually encouraging me to come to fellowship and to share things like this. And ultimately, I'm thankful every single time that she encourages me. So that's the clunky state of my faith and my science right now. And I open up the floor to questions. Thank you very much for listening.